Yeah,
But I'm just curious, is that going to be like the permanent blockage? Because I know a lot of people rely on, I know the gym's down at the pool, it's the opposite way.
right. So,
It's more just figuring out.
yeah, I understand.
Like what that plan was, right?
And the question was, and this was really referring specifically to an existing cut through of the Saks property, which exists at the end of Baltusrol Way, which some people use to walk through and then get to the train station or Milburn Avenue.
It's classified as a fire gate as of now.
A fire gate, okay. So, understood. So the way the plan is drafted is that in order to provide adequate transition and buffering to the adjacent residential area, there's a 20-foot wide vegetated buffer and fencing that's going to be required along the extent of that property line. Obviously, it's a private property, right? So currently, to the extent people are walking through there, it is technically trespassing. In terms of how that all gets resolved, I think that may be a planning board site plan review issue. So it's a detail that can be worked out, but offer. I think the plan is otherwise silent on that specificity with the access there and the cut through the property. But as we view it from sort of a planning and legal perspective, it's an existing trespass situation. We wanted to create that transition through the buffer to the adjacent area. So that's the way the plan is drafted now. That's a detail that can be worked out at site plan review level. Yes.
I live right on Tower Drive and been there 40-some odd years. There was always a courtesy with previous owners to allow people in the various areas to walk up to Short Hills Station. I know you're trespassing. I'm sure there's lawyers who think about laying liability cases, but that was a courtesy extended to the people that lived there way back when, by the owners of Saks. The other thing I want to mention, we came in late because I thought it started at 6:30, but apparently it started early. As we call the fire gate, which is on Walters Hall, where would the traffic from that complex go into Short? There's another road, as you know, on the other side of those houses that on Walters Hall by the TD Bank. That's never been addressed from day one. Who owns that property? Do you own that property that goes to Morris Avenue, or does the town own it?
The town. I'm the consultant to the township, so I don't own any property. But the way access is going to work to this site is through what's called, it's lot 34. So this is a privately owned piece of property that extends out to Morris Avenue, right? So that was, I think, historically one of the access points to Saks itself. So that would be a dedicated residents-only, entrance point to the property itself.
So there, with that complex.
The people who would live in the complex, it would be a controlled entry for residents and visitors to the property.
So then you will not need where we call the fire gate.
The fire gate, if the fire gate, I think that's what you're referring to, what I was just talking about at the end of Baltusrol Avenue. Right, so that's something that will have to get worked out during the context of site plan approval at the planning board.
Out of self, there'd be a lot of cars going back and forth. As it is now, it's a.
Oh, to be clear, so under the plan as drafted, it's closed now, it would be closed under the way the plan is drafted now. So there's no vehicular access to the property from Baltusrol Avenue. We wanted to make sure that it was controlled and provided through that dedicated driveway all the way out to Morris Avenue. So no vehicular traffic from this project on the Saks property should be impacting any of the residential streets located to the south of the site because there's no access to the property from that way.
The reason why I bring it because it's a cut through. People from Morris Avenue that go to Milburn Short Hills use our roads as a cut through. They speed. I've told the cops a number of times that they could make a killing and reduce our taxes by giving tickets there because they just go right for these young kids that live there who have very young kids now. I'm one of the old guys. But they come through like is 50 miles an hour, and the police neighbors do come, they want to the blue moon, but they hide by the fence. By that time, it's too late, the guys didn't see them, but they speed, because there's two false stop signs there, but that's a long battle that we fought, so it's not your.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yes.
When you say controlled entry, do you mean a gate or?
Yes, the way the plan is drafted. And again, some of this is going to get worked out at site plan review, but as of now, we're requiring that the entrance point from Morris Avenue through the private driveway into the lot will be a controlled gated entry to the site.
I would think, just like Barbara mentioned, parking for people, for those of us who live close to the train station or at bus, there's no parking up there anymore. So I can imagine that people are gonna try to park in this lot and walk to the train station. Well, that's what I'm asking, so they won't be able to get in.
Yeah, so we were aware of that. We wanted to make sure that, first of all the uses that are being developed on the site are adequately self-parked within the property, but then also to prevent others from utilizing parking within the site. So that's addressed through the redevelopment plan. Yes?
Who's the applicant, who's the developer? Is it Rizzuto or Oslo driving it, or who's doing what?
So there's no applicant at this stage. We're potentially considering a redevelopment plan for adoption this evening. And I think Mr. Jessic could speak to next steps, but there's a separate process which would designate a redeveloper down the road.
Getting approved as an overlay, or what's the?
The township is considering a redevelopment plan for adoption, so that's essentially zoning that is specific to this property, specific to this concept plan for the site.
Rizzuto on the sign. What's Rizzuto's?
Yeah, so Bizzuto is the current property owner's prospective development partner in terms of
Oslo
yeah.
is potentially JVing or doing something with Rizzuto, who's driving and paying for it.
The existing property owner has had discussions with the prospective development partner, and if they're in fact designated as the redeveloper, they would move forward with the project. Yes?
So everything looks great, and I'm very excited for it. Then you go through towns that already have established downtown, Milburn, Westfield, you see all these vacancies there, which already have desirable places that people want to put businesses. What's gonna help fill these retail shops in Springfield? Are we gonna do any type of like publicity campaign? Is there gonna be any tax incentives for new businesses or anything like that?
Well, I know you have an active business improvement district, which is a wonderful thing. You know, the retail market is always a challenge in these redevelopment projects. I think one of the things that's notable about the Saks project, albeit this is on Milburn Avenue, which is, you know, a Milburn retail corridor, but we did not require continuous retail along the entire frontage of that building because there was marketability concerns. There's a certain square footage of retail required. I think it's 6,000 square feet, but nothing above that. In terms of the other redevelopment projects approved along Morris Avenue in the heart of Springfield's downtown, I think providing new marketable retail space, you know, along Morris Avenue, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at interest in new, you know, high quality space. I mean, could it take some time to lease up, perhaps? But you know, I think it'll be very exciting for Morris Avenue to see that come online. Yes.
So I heard that road going out on the property, that private road, is gonna be residence only. What kind of traffic studies have been done for cars coming in and out there? 'Cause if you make a right off, you know, the streets on the side streets up there, it's very difficult to get out during the day. So I wonder what kind of traffic studies have been done to address that. Because you're gonna have, you know, high density apartments and the rest of the residents coming in. So how's that intersection gonna work?
Yeah,
There's a wine
we're-
library there that generates at times, like that's if they have a patrolman there, it's during holidays.
Understood. So the question is about traffic, particularly on Morris Avenue, exiting from the Saks project. So we did have a traffic engineer study this. We were well aware of the potential issues with those movements. Jay, do you want to give a quick overview of your findings? And I would just also say on this issue and any others related to access to the site, this is really a site plan issue for the planning board, but we've already taken a preliminary look at these issues, so that's what.
My question is because it's high density, you're talking about, I don't know how many units, 20 plus whatever townhouses, so you're talking about like 1,000 people living there, you know, so that's why I'm asking.
Yes, and we took a preliminary look for the council for their action, and as described, there are 3 ways in and out of this site. There will be 2 in and out of Milburn, and that intersection you're referring to that goes in and out of Morris, that is under the jurisdiction of the New Jersey Department of Transportation. So any activity at that is going to be looked at by the NJDOT. My guess would be that it would be a right turn out and not a left turn out there, but that's still to be determined as part of a permit process with the.
So there'll be an approval for this before you know what the traffic issue is.
No, we've looked at
Under the
the,
state's jurisdiction.
the traffic issue has been reviewed. The analysis I did, the model I did, assumed what I just described to you, that would happen at the Department of Transportation, and there's still adequate capacity due to the various ways in and out of the property to process the flows from this size.
Has anybody spoken to the state, because that's an assumption? You all know the state.
I have not spoken to the state on this matter, but have been there many, many times on other matters, and have an understanding of typically what they would do with a roadway like this.
My other question is it necessary to have that kind of density on that property for apartments? And, you know, it's high density. Because there's gonna be, I don't know, who knows, obviously like hundreds and hundreds, maybe 400 or 500 units, all going up at the same time in town. You know, people obviously will move in, but 400 or 500 units are not gonna be rented overnight, you know, so how's that all gonna be managed with that many units? Does it have to be that many?
Well, so we're talking about multiple projects here that are going to be phased in and built in over time. I think you can already see from some of the recent history, these things do take some time. They're staggered. But in each project and as a whole, we've looked at all the impact considerations. So we've looked at traffic, you know, we've talked about sewer situation. We've looked at, for each of these, aesthetics, you know, building height, et cetera. So for each project, including the Saks redevelopment plan, you know, the density is permitted because it works for the site. It can be accommodated on the site in light of all those impact concerns and based on the fact that we think it's an appropriate development type and level of density for that specific site.
Being permitted is one thing, it has to be put out as another thing.
Well, right, but
It's permitted doesn't mean it's required.
and ultimately, that's why we're here this evening. It's a judgment call for the township committee. What we can tell you is that as the township's professionals, we've evaluated this very thoroughly and addressed all the potential impact concerns as it would relate to density. And we think it's an appropriate development concept for the property.
Can you speak to the brook? What's gonna happen to the brook?
The brook in the rear of the Saks redevelopment, obviously, it's going to be subject to NJDP regulations. There may be a setback required from that. I don't, Mike, do you have any-
NJDP is obviously going to be involved with that project because it's adjacent to a stream. What the rendering shows, though, is basically an elimination or removal of pavement areas which kind of go up to that, and revegetation, what is commonly known as a riparian zone, which is a buffer in order to provide water quality, runoff enhancements to a stream. So that's preliminarily shown to be incorporated. Ultimately, though, it has to be determined by New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection as to whether the buffer is sufficient. Normally, when you have a impacted or disturbed riparian zone, as this is in the existing condition, you usually can maintain that. In this case, there's basically a showing that they're going to increase or improve that riparian zone. So, hope that addresses that.
I didn't repeat the question, but it was for the stream buffer adjacent to the rear of the Saks.
Okay, you're gonna have about 425 apartments in town, and when that put a strain on Caldwell, there's gonna have a lot of 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, and that brings children, so you're probably looking at about 50 to 100 students, and of course, school buses. And I don't know, I mean, we all live in town, I don't know if you do, but Morris Avenue in the morning and at rush hour in the afternoon, and Mountain Avenue all the way down to 22, you can't make all that turn out of that side street.
So on the school issue, as Mr. Jessup indicated earlier, I don't know if you're here for that, but the school district does have a demographer who has been studying the impacts of new developments in town in connection with just projected enrollment based on birth rates and other demographic trends in town. And the conclusion has been, and he's been studying each of these approved or prospectively approved developments, that there will be capacity within the school district to accommodate these projects as you look out into the future, 5, 6 years. And that's because, as I understand it, the school district, but for these projects, would be experiencing an actual decline in enrollment just based on demographic trends in town. Traffic issues on each project, traffic is studied both at the redevelopment plan stage, but then also in more detailed manner at site plan review before the planning board. So as you heard, we've already done some initial traffic assessments for the Saks redevelopment project, and then when the applicant would come before the planning board for approval, they would submit a detailed traffic analysis, and we would dig into to more of the details. Yes?
With respect to the Saks property, how many cars or percentage of cars do you expect to enter and exit through Milburn Avenue portion of the property?
The question was what percentage or how many cars would be entering the Saks property from Milburn Avenue. Is that right?
We had done a preliminary distribution on that. I would say it's probably about 70% on Milburn Avenue between the two access driveways. The one other item we took a look at is the trip generation of the existing department store use. You're redeveloping a department store. The proposed redevelopment actually reduces that impact because you're going from a heavy department store retail demand down to a less intense residential demand.
First of all, it's really good to see everyone. Mike's Blair, the chairman of the board of the Business Improvement District. It's great to see everybody here with all their concerns and their questions. We've been working on this for the past 8 years, and one thing I can tell you about this township committee and everybody involved is that they are addressing all those issues: traffic, school systems, all the parking going involved. So they are working very, very hard and making sure it's right. We've been doing this for 8 years, and nothing's been done. We've been told it's never going to happen. It's amazing to see everybody here and see these renditions right now, involved with what's going on in the community. The idea behind everything right now is to make this town vibrant. I've been in the buildings; they're in really bad shape. They're a safety hazard. They have to go. So what they're deciding to do is what's going to become of all these properties that are in really bad shape. And now we have redevelopers, people that want to come in and make a difference, make Springfield better. So my question is, if all goes through, take each project at a time, how long approximately do you think it takes to go from demolition to when everything gets approximately? So we can get an idea.
So the question was how long roughly do each of these projects take? I mean, if you're talking, are you talking approvals are in hand and just, so from demo to vertical construction to certificates of occupancy? So, I mean, obviously it's going to depend on the project, but I mean, these in general are probably, 1.5 to 2 year, construction periods once you're demoed and going vertical.
So what's the construction period? Because now you have projects going everywhere, we're building apartments everywhere to change the town. What's the timeline? Are we going to have, Morris Avenue's going to be completely torn up and Milburn Avenue's going to be torn up and everything's going to be going on at the same time? Because it seems like they're very slow. That other project on, in the center of town where the building was going to come down last year, the year before, with the fence since the end of the year, is slower than it's supposed to be. So that one's going to run in, I'm guessing, into this one, which is going to run into the one across the street, which is going to run into Church Mall, and you're going to have 4 or 5 projects, theoretically, or probably all going at the same time, with probably a township that's got 2 or 3 people in the engineering department that are monitoring contractors and developers on all the things that have to be done, and you're going to have, unless the town's going to contract out and have a lot of people, who's going to manage all this from the town's perspective to make sure all the ordinances are followed? Because it's a pretty big job.
It is, and as Mike said, I mean, we've all been at this for 8 years, so that'll be a great problem.
With the projects, so I guess.
Right, and so I mean, that'll be a great problem to have, right? If all of these projects are actually moving forward. I mean, as you said, the Gomes project has been, 4+ years in the making, and we got a fence and a garage that got demoed, and that's about it, right? So it's obviously a little unpredictable. I think it's actually a little bit backwards. I think the Larkin project, which is doing demo and doing environmental remediation, probably goes up, and may be close to done before the other projects are even getting into the ground. And now at least you've got separation geographically. So it is hard to tell. It's a rolling process, but we will all be working with Mike and the balance of the township professionals on the projects. Yeah, so the clerk is giving me the mean look. What that means is, unfortunately, because there is a 7 o'clock advertised notice public meeting of the mayor and governing body, we have to end this public information session. But as I mentioned, the governing body tonight is considering the redevelopment plan for the Saks site, at which public comment, public statements are welcome. So we do have to commence that meeting. On behalf of the mayor, the governing body, the planning board, and all the other professionals, we really want to thank you. As Mike said, it's great to see so many people involved and energetic and curious about what's going on. And I suspect we'll do this again